All right, it is Monday morning. That means it's time to catch up with J Leman, our All-American linebacker, breakdown Illinois, starting 3-0, Jay. This doesn't happen very often. So first time since 2011 that they've been 3-0. Only team to do that since 2002 was 2011, and they go undefeated in non-conference play. I found this amazing. Just for the third time since 2002, and two of those are in the last 3 years with Brett Bielema. So Illinois is a program that wasn't ranked for a whole decade, Jay, from 2012 to 2021. Here they are, number 24 in the country and 3-0. It's worth something.
Yeah, if you're an Illinois fan, let's look at it from the context of that, right? There's all things we can criticize, but there's a lot of things we can be excited about. Hey, we took care of business against an FCS team. We took care of business against an FBS team at home that was ranked. We took care of business against a group of 5 team at home, which, we have had plenty of issues with that. Even last year with Toledo, that was a scare, right? We've seen Eastern Michigan. We've talked about that. So I think the level of consistency is much better in disciplined football for Illinois football right now. I think you got to celebrate that, man. We're 3-0, taking care of business, and we're in national conversations for bigger games, just like the one that's coming up this week.
Yeah, we'll talk about a top 25 matchup in Lincoln to start Big Ten play, one of 4 over the next 5 weeks for Illinois, or 6 weeks, I guess, with 5 games. But let's start with the Central Michigan game. And I thought the thing that stood out the most to me, Jay, we'll dive into the offense, but the defensive line and defensive front really imposed its will. So how important was that to see after they kind of contained against Kansas, to see them get after the quarterback, and how much of that is translatable going into Nebraska?
Yeah, I thought Seth Coleman and Gabe Akis had their best games. I think for me, and we've talked about this before, I know it's very easy to look at a box score and stat line and say this guy had half tackle for loss, or he had 6 sacks, so therefore he had a good game. But really it's about being disruptive, and those guys were disruptive. I would say 2/3 of the pass plays, I felt like they were in there. I think Labus did a decent job getting the ball out, but I thought they were disruptive. I thought they were disruptive in the run game, and Gabe, from the very first play, we saw Gabe in the backfield. We saw Seth doing something. I thought Dennis Briggs was solid as well. Again, I think Joe Barna continues to impress me just with his sheer strength, I think, for being a young guy. And T-Raw Edwards, right? We hadn't gotten a ton of production out of the nose at times, but he, as far as tackles and whatnot, but T-Raw's been improved. He's been stout at the point of attack. And I think when we get into Big Ten play, we're going to have to be stout. I certainly don't think we are a top tier defensive line in the conference, but I do think we can be serviceable. I think we can be mid-tier with our athleticism. We just have to run our defense correctly and give us a chance against some bigger bodied teams.
Yeah, even saw Pat Farrell flash on a few plays.
Yeah.
That was nice to see. But you mentioned T-Raw. He's providing some pass rush pressure and just collapsing that pocket a little bit. Calvin Avery and Denzel Daxon were pretty good. Rodder Perry's pretty good. But, what does that add when you got a guy that can actually rush the passer from that nose tackle?
Well, you're always trying to get your best guy on a one-on-one matchup. And it's easy to double up guys on the edge like Coleman and Akis with chipping somebody, whether it's with a back or chipping someone with a tight end or an H position, which is the tight end, off of the line. But if you could have a good interior rusher, it can just, again, the name of the game, I say it all the time, is disruption, is it makes it very, very difficult for that offensive line to know where all the help is coming from. And it's going to help you with your interior blitzes, right? Because if T-Rock can pick an offensive lineman to let a linebacker go free, or if he can take 2 defensive linemen and leave a one-on-one for a guy like Dennis Briggs, who's pretty twitchy in that 4-eye position, he's able to rush. It's going to help us so much all across the board. And what I like about T-Raw is I think he's just had a level of consistency. I don't think he's had a bad game. We've seen him play better some games, but I think he's been very consistent. There hasn't been one time where I thought T-Raw got blown off of the ball this year. They've schemed us up in the Kansas game to get a couple runs, but it wasn't because T-Raw was getting blown off the ball.
It feels like Aaron Henry's game plan has worked, especially the last 2 weeks against better opponents, obviously. Sure. Last week, they wanted to contain, make Jalen Daniels a pocket passer. This week coming in, I think you and I talked about, Joe Labus likes to throw the deep ball. Central Michigan can really stretch it. They barely were able to do that because of the pass rush. And I think he only threw 6 passes of 10+ yards, Jay. He was 1 of 6 with an interception on those. So that really stood out. So is there anything else about that defense, whether it's the secondary, the linebackers, Aaron Henry's game plan that stood out?
Well, for me, I've just been really impressed at the interchangeability of some of those players on the back end. I think we saw Tyler Strain come in at the star, which is the nickel. We've seen Xavier Scott go over to corner. We saw Terrence Brooks get some time. See, Caleb Patterson's been a mainstay. And I really believe our safeties, we got 2 really good safeties, very different safeties in Miles Scott and Matthew Bailey. One is a free and one is a true strong safety. But what I liked is that we didn't have to get exotic. We just played what we played. Like sometimes you see these defenses where you go into games, and I've been on some of these defenses, you come up with 6 or 7 different blitzes just to try to confuse somebody because you can't line up and stop somebody. And what I've seen is the last 2 games, we haven't had to get overly exotic. I think on the pass rush, we did have to change our game against Jalen Daniels because we made a bet that he can't beat us with his arm. That was the correct bet to make. But what I like to see, and on really solid defenses, you'll see it with Iowa. When Alabama had it going on, you would see this. Georgia, you'll still see it today. But really good defenses, they don't do much. Michigan didn't do much, right? They would line up and do stuff. And that's because you got to remember, defense is a reactionary thing, right? You're always reacting to the offense. And so it's not so much about, do I know what I'm doing? It's more, do I know what the offense is going to do to me? And I think that's what, when you take the next step as a defense, is it's not so much about, oh, we're going to run this, we're going to run that, we're going to attack them this way. Yes, there can be a part of that. But it's when you know your system so well and you have confidence in your abilities that you start to train your mind to say, how is this person going to attack me? How is this team going to attack me? And then I'm ready for it. And that's where I really believe the defense is taking the next step, because there's nothing really exotic. I just see the recognition and trust in their abilities and trust from the coaches and confidence from the coaches to run what we run and be okay with it and battle and know, hey, you might give up a play or 2, but you'll be okay if they have to go the whole distance.
Yeah, it speaks to experience, right? I mean, they bent but didn't break against Central Michigan, but they found a way to bow up. They'll probably give up a couple touchdowns to a Big Ten team that way. But
sure.
Jay, I feel confident they can go into these games in the Big Ten and give Illinois a chance.
Yeah, here's my big concern that I'm worried about is I don't think we're going to give up huge pass plays unless we start to get gashed in the run and we have to make adjustments.
Yep.
I can see a team, like, I mean, Nebraska hasn't necessarily ran the ball that great, but like a Penn State loves to run the ball in different scenarios with great schemes. I can see us having to adjust and bringing Miles Scott closer, bringing Xavier Scott close to the box. And that's why I think we're going to become vulnerable. So it's really, for me, is can we stop the run with our front 7? And that's a big question as we get into conference play, because one, they'll be able to control the clock. That Kansas game, up into the 4th quarter, they dominated time of possession, kept our offense off of the field, averaging 7 yards a carry. And that will open up shots. So that's my big concern. I don't think we have stymied the run in one game other than Eastern, like I want to see us stymie the run, like a Nebraska defense has been able to stop the run. And so I think we made improvement, especially on the back end. I think we still got good football teams. They run the ball and stop the run. As Brett says, run the ball, defend the run, cover kicks. We haven't done those 2 things, yet we're 3-0, partially because of the turnover margin, right? And so as we get in the Big Ten, I know it's just not sexy at all, Jeremy. Can you run the ball and can you defend the run? Yeah. And those are the questions that are still lingering in my mind.
Can I ask you before we switch to the offense, how do you feel about the linebacker play so far? I don't have a lot of concerns about Dylan Rosiak, but I'm a little concerned about depth. You did see James Krutz flash a little bit, but
sure.
Just how do you feel about that position right now?
I think when Kenenna Odeluga, I know he's back, but I still think he's not 100% based off of that injury. So he provided a big depth piece to that. I'm thrilled that I love that the targeting got overturned. I think that's big, but and Krutz seemed to be banged up with a club on his arm, right? Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to see a lot of Matthew Bailey playing up in the box because we are so thin at that position. We don't have a lot of backers that are playing. I believe behind Kreutz, would it be Malachi Hood maybe? Does he play there? Or
does he play outside? Ryan Mead's playing a lot of that weak side in front of Odeluga right now.
Yeah, Ryan Mead has been very, very solid. You know, he's a guy that won't make a mistake, won't be super flashy. But I think they've been I think Dylan Rosiak has been probably the best player. Kreutz flashes, right, when he's in. I certainly think he's on his way to being a starter at some point. But I am concerned about the depth. Now, that being said, there's a lot of defenses. There's only one or two linebackers out there, right? So do you need as much depth there? Maybe not. And the way Xavier Scott is playing and Matthew Bailey, those guys are really your guys that can play in and outside of the box. Bailey probably more so than Xavier, but Xavier's been physical at the point of attack.
All right, I want to take a minute to tell you about Home Field Apparel because they are the premium collegiate apparel brand, and they're based in nearby Indianapolis. Home Field sent me a few shirts, and what I love about them is, of course, they have incredibly comfortable, well-fitting shirts, but they also have officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. And they have more than 180 plus available colleges, including, yes, your Illinois Fighting Illini. They have great gear for the upcoming football season, so for the warm weather games, check out their Script Illini t-shirt, the Orange Ringer tee, the vintage Oski Wawa helmet, or for the fall chillier games, check out the Script Illini hoodie, the Flying Illini hoodie, the Flying Illini quarter zip, and if they're still available, you might want to check out homefieldapparel.com for this. Check out their Script Bomber jacket. It is awesome. Also, don't miss their Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign. So Home Field is giving away these special football boxes, and these platinum VIP boxes include 3 never-before-seen items from your school that are not available anywhere else. They're curated so fans have new gear to wear all season long, suitable for all weather conditions. And these platinum boxes also include other exclusive items, including a new hat or ringer, a VIP koozie, and a 2024 Platinum Pass, which guarantees 20% off and early access to your school's football releases through the 2024 season. The football boxes are available on August 9th, so these will sell out quick, so go check them out. Go to homefieldapparel.com to check out their great selection of Illini gear and use code Illini24, that's all capitals, Illini24, for 15% off. That's Illini24 for 15% off at homefieldapparel.com.
All right, Jay, let's switch to the offense. Let's start with the positive. Luke Altmaier's playing really well right now.
Oh, man, really well.
Yeah, what stands out most to you through his first 3 games?
Well, you know, this is something that I've always thought is an underrated aspect. That's the catchability of his football. You know, he throws a very, very catchable ball. I would kind of, for Illinois fans, I would go back to Wes Lunt. You know, Wes Lunt, for maybe some of his shortcomings, had a very, very catchable ball, and you had a lot less drops, right? I've played with some quarterbacks in the NFL and in college where there's not a ton of touch on the football and you have more drops. So do I think that Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant have good hands? I do. But do I think the way that it's delivered by Luke Altmaier makes a big difference? Yes. I think Devin Leary has a big arm. Donovan Leary has a big arm. I don't think he has the touch of Luke Altmaier from what I've seen. I think Leary would have a bigger arm. That being said, what I like about Luke is he's kind of that guy that does everything good. I wouldn't say he does one thing great. And sometimes those are your best college football players. Just telling you that right now. So when I think about a quarterback, number one has to be accuracy. He's throwing the ball in an accurate manner. Okay. Number two, you have to be just a leader. And can you actually shoulder the load of getting a team down the field? He's done that, right? I think he's shown leadership qualities. And we know he wasn't voted a captain, but when they need a score, I believe they believe in that Luke Altmaier can get there. Number 3, can this guy make something out of nothing in crunch time with his legs or by scrambling to throw? He can do that, right? And how many times have we said in an Illini season, man, we wish we could stretch the field? It's not even a question right now. We can stretch the field. So I want to talk about that. And we've been able to stretch the field without even having an interior run game. That's the shocking part, right? Because usually it's based off of the play action. And so Luke's doing all those things. Do I think he's got great arm strength? No, I wouldn't say it's elite. Do I think he's like the most mobile guy ever? No, but I think he's very good at the college level. So I think he's good at almost everything you want him to be good at. Do I think he's like, man, this guy has a hose like Caleb Williams and, this guy is this? And I don't, but I think he's a really good quarterback. And I think if you compare him to some of the other guys out of the portal that came out 2 years ago, he's had just as much production as almost anybody.
Like, I know you said this before, but I feel like you got a quarterback going into Big Ten play that gives you a chance most games.
Well, in college football, you've got a chance if you got a quarterback.
Yeah.
If you don't have a quarterback, man, you got to have everything go right for you. Turnovers.
We've seen many years of that, Jay.
We've seen that, right? It's like you get down 7 to 10 points, you feel like there's no way we can score, right? And so we have a quarterback in Luke Altmaier. He's taken a big step from year 1 to year 2. I will say that. And I do think the Zachary Franklin pickup has been huge for this team, right? That has been a huge thing. Very crafty, very wily, knows how to get open. Certainly not a burner, but very, very strong hands. And then Pat Bryant is a all Big Ten receiver. I'll play like an All-American for the first 3 weeks of the season. You can say he's probably one of the best receivers in all of college football through the first 3 weeks.
I was going to ask you, like, best wide receiver group since when? Because it's weird because you just had 2 NFL wide receivers on your team last year, but they are different than what you had last year in Isaiah Williams. But what does that do as a defense when a team, I mean, they have 2 number 1 wideouts, right? Like, I mean, 2 guys that are capable of all Big Ten. What does that mean for a defense if you're preparing for Illinois?
So let's get back. I love talking Illinois history because I just, I'm a fan of it. I think you got to go back to, every great era of Illinois football had 2 good wide receivers. You think about the 80s with Mike Martin and David Williams and Tim Brewster at the tight end position. I'm sure I'm missing other guys, right? But let's talk about the 1990s with Jeff George. And, you got Mike Bellamy. You've got Sean Wax. You've got John Wright Jr. as a possession guy. If you go to the 2000 team, you've got Walter Young, Brandon Lloyd, Greg Lewis, who played the NFL for a couple of years. Josh
Aaron Moorhead, that group too.
Aaron Moorhead as well. You have 4 receivers. You go to the 2007 team, you've got Aurelius Ben, you've got Jeff Cumberland, you've got Michael Manawanui, even Marquise Wilkins. Was it Marquise Wilkins? We call him Bub Wilkins. You had a couple players in there that you're like, okay, we can throw the football to, and now you get good again, and you think, okay, now I'm happy for Casey Washington. But for the majority of his career, he didn't play like an NFL receiver. So, I'm glad he made it. That's not a knock on him. But,
no, those last 3 games,
NFL receivers.
Those last 3 games were something we hadn't seen before, and it got him to the NFL, right? And I think the special teams angle, but he wasn't that player. He wasn't a 6th-round pick for most of his career. Like, these 2 are producing like they should be draft picks right now.
Yeah, that's the thing. And here's the thing. And for as good as Isaiah Williams was, and do I believe we missed that element a little bit right now of Isaiah Williams in our offense? Unless he was wide open down the field, he was not making that catch. I mean, he was wide open in that Minnesota game where Paddock hit him deep. Like he had outrun coverage, but he's not going to be making contested catches just because of his body size, right? The catch radius on Zachary, on Pat Bryant, even on Colin Dixon, who I think is kind of a hybrid. And I think he won that job because of our emphasis on the run game and wanting those guys to block. I think he blocks probably just because his body better than Karnari Wilcher, better than Rio, and better than Beatty. So all those things add into it. But, man, what it does to a defense is, I'll tell you this, we used to roll with Vontae Davis, Rip. We used to roll man-to-man on the backside with Vontae. He would man up their best receiver, and we would all play zone. Now, when you got less athletic people on your defense like me, you let the middle linebacker kind of just sit in the middle. I call it like the Ray Lewis defense. Did Ray Lewis really do much pass coverage other than go back there? Not really. They kind of protected him because, I mean, I'm not comparing myself to Ray Lewis. I'm just saying the middle linebacker is not a great guy in pass coverage, okay? So if you got a guy like Vontae that can take one guy off the field, man, it makes everybody else's job easier. But now you got 2. Man, it's very, very difficult. And they can run multiple routes. Sometimes you'll get a receiver that can just run route. Oh, I can do an option route to left. They can run the slant. They can run the slant and go with the sluggo. They can run the go route. They can run the deep crossers, which they did for the first touchdown. They can run the screen game. They can do a lot of different things, makes it very difficult.
All right, let's get into this run game because it is not going, Jay, especially on the interior. So break down. What are you seeing? Is the issue just execution? Is it scheme? Is it personnel? Or is it a little bit of all of it?
Yeah, I mean, so I think yes, and yes. I mean, if a run game's not going well, what can you do to change up? Well, you can change up personnel. You could change up scheme. You could change up formation. Formation is not just where people line up as far as linemen go. It's where's the back lined up. Again, we saw Caden Fagan sometimes out of the pistol. He ran it's hard to judge on the 2-yard touchdown run, but he went out of the pistol there and, man, barely got touched, kind of got a full head of steam. You can't judge it on one play. I just think for what we're doing when it comes to, there's 3 big runs that you really want to get good at that every team has. That's the lead, also known as the ISO, the power, and the counter. And we're not great at those right now. We don't have a true fullback, but it's either the H or Brandon Henderson that runs that ISO. We did see Khalil Valentine on that ISO play where Henderson came in, was able to bounce it out for a big run. But I think that's got to be the baseline of your running attack. Can I run lead? Can I run power? Can I run counter? Can I run zone, inside and outside zone, and stretch it? And right now, we cannot run into the interior. Most of our runs are breaking outside of the box, which tells me we're able to reach some people and scheme some people up. But the bread and butter of any good run game has to be running between the tackles. When you can run between the tackles, everything gets easier. The play action gets easier. The RPO gets easier. The outside runs get easier, right? Barry Lenny's a creative guy as far as getting the ball on the outside. We saw that against Eastern. A lot of times we'll see that in the first 15 plays of a script. He'll get the ball outside, but that only works if you can consistently run the ball inside. And we haven't been able to consistently run inside. So I believe that Josh Kreutz would tell you he's got to play better. I believe Geske believes that he's got to play better. Chrysler and Whitenack, I think that whole kind of tip of the spear wedge has not been as airtight as you want it to be. I think Melvin Priestley is physical. I think at times he can get outside of maybe his technique because he's still learning. And I do think J.C. Davis is a better pass blocker than he is a mauling run blocker. You know, I always thought Isaiah Adams was a better run blocker than pass blocker, right? And I think we're missing a little bit of that presence of kind of that mauler inside on a very consistent level, where I think J.C. Davis is the opposite. I think he is more of a pass blocker. And so kind of finding the right combination, mixing up the snap count, going on first down, going on 2, use different things, using motion, using shifts, different things to get us an advantage of half a man or a man. And of course, maybe pulling out the quarterback run sooner so that they have to actually think about Luke Altmaier. Now you'll miss that one big 20-yard run, but he always gets every game the first or second time he runs. But I just think that would add to it.
I want to throw a couple things out at you with this, Jay. Personnel wise, I feel like Khalil Valentine continues to earn more touches, and obviously He's got the quickness to do it. Offensive line wise, I feel like this is the week they get challenged, right? Like their manhood challenged a little bit, especially on that interior. But if they don't produce this week, I think that's when they could, hey, Brandon Henderson or hey, Hunter White. Like I feel like that's when they would potentially do it. So what do you think about potential personnel changes?
Well, I think they're going to face probably the best nose tackle they're going to face all year until they faced Mason. Is it Mason Graham at Michigan? Yeah. So between Graham and I believe it's Nash Hutmacher, the polar bear they call him, number 0, I believe. For Nebraska.
He fills out that 0, yeah.
Yeah, I would say this. He's probably him and Mason Graham are probably the best 2 nose tackles that they're going to see all year. So there's a reason Nebraska's run defense is solid, and it feels like Robinson on the D line has been there forever. It's like he's like, Juice Williams didn't have the COVID year, but we thought he was there forever, right? But like, I mean, this guy's been there forever, right? I remember Scott Frost talking about him. Probably year 1 to year 2, of Scott Frost there, and he's still there. But that being said, they're going to be really good. I do think this is kind of a come to Jesus moment for the offensive line. Hey, either we get it together, we've got to put somebody in there that's going to get it done. And what I'd love to see is what we all thought would see is, hey, a big time run game that sets up the play action pass to go deep to Bryant and Franklin have already been productive, but I think can be more productive. We can see the full showcase of what Barry Lunny wants to do. And the thing that's been puzzling for us, right, under Brett Bielema is we haven't run the ball dominantly all the time. Even with Chase Brown, we weren't leading the Big Ten in rushing, right? We have led the Big Ten in rushing at times. I mean, Rod Smith did it. We did it in 2006 and 2007, right? So we've done it. We just haven't ran the ball at the level that maybe we expected a Brett Bielema team to do, or that Brett thinks should be done.
All right, let me throw out a phrase at you, and does this make sense? Passing to set up the run. Do you think that is something Barry Lunny starts to lean into? Because you can tell when they need to go score at the beginning of the third quarter, they lean into that passing game. They lean into the RPO game a little bit more. And I think Altmaier's making great decisions out of that. So is that something that they go?
You're exactly right, Jeremy. Is you can see what an offensive coordinator really wants to do or does trust in when they need a play, right? They're gonna go who they trust. Like you just it's really that simple. Now, there is always a ongoing discussion between the head coach and the offensive coordinator of what needs to be run and when needs to be run to some degree. Sometimes it's left, sometimes it's I'm speaking totally, this is my take, so this is not what I know. Do I think that Barry Lunny, being a former quarterback, and what I saw him do at UTSA, would love to sling it around the yard? I do. Do I think that Brett knows the Big Ten and knows we have to run the ball and hold the ball to help our defense, and that's who we are? Yes. So do I think that goes against – not again, I think it's a good, healthy tension. I think Harry Easton and Ron Turner had the same thing going on, right? So I think that's a good, healthy tension. I think what gets difficult is when you get into a game and you're like, shoot, we got to win this game. What do? We see where we have confidence in. So I do think you run to set up the pass. They were really high on Aiden Lawfrey. Now, Aiden Lawfrey not being healthy 100%, I think has forced this offense a little bit. So they kind of reevaluate. Khalil Valentine's how to get in there. It's not uncommon. They've said, hey, we didn't want somebody quicker in there. It's not uncommon to have runs that work for one running back and not the other. They haven't had Aiden Lawfrey in really the last 1.5 games, it kind of seems like. Could that change? But do I think they need to pass to set the run? At this point, yes. The RPO is working, right? I love to see what I saw to Colin Dix on a little screen. It seems like whenever we want it, we could run a 7 or 8 yard out to Zakari, catch it. Like it seems like that's there for the taking, right? And so if it's there, why not bang that like 3-4 times on a drive and just say, hey, stop it. Okay, I'm going to roll my safety over there, get him out of the box a little bit. I'm going to help. I'm going to push my linebacker out. Okay, then I'm going to fake it and hand it off to the back and run right where that guy's at. So yes, that's what I would like to see, because it seems like the Zakari short to mid-range game is open all the time.
Yeah. You mentioned the other thing, Jay. Not a lot of slot action this year without Isaiah Williams, and you got a lot of improving guys. Colin Dixon's got some size to him. Pat Bryant's one heck of a blocker.
Sure.
Zakari can block too. I thought he threw some good ones. I wonder if they get that quick game going a little bit more and they go more to 11 personnel than 12 personnel, just because the tight ends, it's just not the strong group on this team right now.
I think that's a really good point. I think 12 with Cole Rusk in the game would have been a different animal, sure. Right? So because Cole was kind of our skill tight end, our out of line tight end, not in line tight end. But I do think they have to bang that option route. But we saw so much with Isaiah Williams and run that play, the crossers, the little option where you can go inside or outside, the snag or whip route. Do we have a guy that can do it? Do I think Kenari Wiltzer can do that? Yes. Do I think Hank Beatty at times can do that? Yes. But who's that guy? Do I think Colin Dixon can maybe use his size more? He's maybe not as twitchy as some of the others. But, yeah, I think that's one thing we haven't necessarily seen that much. But here's what I believe, too. I believe we're going to get Zakari more in the slot as we go into conference play. I mean, there's no mistake about it. They're going to start to move him around to get favorable matchups.
And speaking of good blockers, Malik Elsie, pretty good blocker.
We're not even talking about Malik Elsie. I also saw Ashton Hollins when he was in there on the big McRae run was dominating someone as well. So, we have some big body receivers. Malik Elsie in my opinion, would start at a lot of Big Ten programs.
Sure.
I think he would start at, I've seen Indiana. I think he would start at Indiana. I think he would start at Northwestern. I think he would start at Iowa. I think he would start at a lot of different places right now. And I think this is the challenge that we don't necessarily talk about in the NIL portal era, right? It's like, man, you got a star like Malik Elsley, in-state recruit. You definitely want to keep those relationships right, but he's got two guys that are producing at a high level in front of him. It's just, it is what it is in college football. And it's tough because he could play a lot of different places right now.
Yeah. All right. Last thing about this game, really great special teams, Jay. I mean, Ethan Machowski, obviously with the 59-yard field goal, but Hank Beatty, punt returner. I think Hugh Robertson's been some pretty good this year, and they covered well. So a good day for Robbie Disher's crew, and they got some kicker weapons, man.
So if you're a ball possession team like Illinois, man, having those kicker weapons, you get within the 35, you feel pretty good with the wind or not. Well, I guess if you get within the, by the 40 now at this point, we saw Machowski do, but that was impressive on all ends. So the kicking game has been solid. Hugh Robertson's been better. It's good to see Hank Beatty catching the football. Do I think that Mac Resetich showed a little bit more explosiveness in the Eastern game? Yes, but you also had a muff punt in that game and in the Kansas game. I think Resetich's time will come. He's just got to kind of get that figured out as far as catching the football and Beatty. But that's an edge we're going to have. Listen, we can't when I look at our rosters, I think we'd probably say, at least in the offensive and defensive line, we're probably a little bit outmanned on our next two opponents. Probably, right? At the skill position, I'm not sure. I'll put our skill guys up to a lot of guys. I'll put our DBs up to a lot of teams. Like I don't think we're at a disadvantage at all. But if we're going to win a game where maybe we don't have the edge on paper in the trenches, the special teams and turnovers got to show up.
Yep.
And that's where you're going to have to win the game. We cannot continue to win games getting out rushed and not able to stop the run when we really need to stop the run and get people behind the chains. And so I think that's important moving forward.
All right, Jay, huge matchup on Saturday with Nebraska, top 25 matchup in Lincoln. I mean, this is a big game for both programs. Nebraska hasn't been to a bowl game since 2016. That's incredibly hard to believe. And Illinois trying to make a statement, right? Because you win this, you're going to be ranked for a little while, even if you lose at Penn State. So chance to really make some national noise here. Let's start on offense with this matchup. There's a great Nebraska front, as you've talked about, Noah Hutmaker and Ty Robinson. What's the key for Barry Lundy Jr. in this offense against Nebraska?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, starting fast. We often start fast on our first drive. I think Barry Lundy schemes them up and has great scripts, and we've talked about that. But when I think starting fast, I think we've had 6 points offensively against Kansas until we had the pick six from Xavier Scott. We really had 10 points until that last second field goal, at the end of the half with was that Machowski's? Is it Machowski?
Machowski, yeah.
Machowski.
Silent L.
So we had 10. So we had 10 points against Central. Like that's not enough. Remember we talked about early in the season to win games in the Big Ten, we wanted to average 30 points a game. Okay. We've got to be in that minimum 2 touchdown range in the first half, I think, to win these games. Right now, I've been wrong before, but on a consistent level, we've got to start faster offensively. How do we do that? I do think we use the pass to set the run. Listen, sometimes you're really proud on your ability to stop the run. We were really proud on our defense, our ability to stop the run. And the first 11 plays of the Rose Bowl was play action pass by Steve Sarkisian and USC, right? So sometimes you're really proud of that. You've got to use the play action. And I say, let's use the play action. I want to see the quarterback run with Luke sliding as well. And then I think you use Caden Fagan, just because he's not running the ball great up the middle, how can we use him different ways? You mentioned to me in a text, hey, throwing the football to Caden Fagan. He's a good receiver. We saw him do that in the Kansas game. We saw that last game. We see it in the Minnesota game last year. We took 1 yard. How can we get him in space and getting downhill? Because he's a load to bring down. So those are different things. And I always think this, players over plays. How do we get it to our playmakers? Zachary and Pat Bryant are our 2 best offensive playmakers outside of Luke Altmaier. How do we get the ball in their hands?
Nebraska feels like it's got a solution to it. What has been quarterback issues in 5-star quarterback Dylan Raiola. Incredibly talented, has been very efficient in his first 3 games. Obviously, Illinois probably his toughest test because Colorado defensively is not very good. But what do you think is key for Aaron Henry in this defense going up against Raiola and Nebraska's offense, which has been good so far this year, but again, probably the biggest test against Illinois.
Yeah, I think Raiola one. He does look like a Mahomes kind of looking like a beefier Mahomes, right? I know that's kind of the joke. But when I think about Nebraska, is they've always had talent offensively. But they've always had a poor execution when it came to turnovers and red zone. And so what you've really got to do is, hey, if you get a turnover or two, this team has not been tested offensively at all. And on the counterpoint, Illinois' offense has not been tested offensively, really, because like as far as how do you respond after a turnover, what happens when you get stymied at the point of attack and you can't, and you get a 4th down that you don't make. Let's make them earn it. Let's test them. Let's get a turnover. Let's stop them in the red zone. See how this quarterback reacts when not everything is going his way. And I do think you got to hit him. He hasn't been hit that much, right? I think you hit him and make him realize he's playing a Big Ten conference game. He's still a freshman. I mean, he's not a world beater. So I think there's a lot of room for error there. And I'm excited to see how Illinois can maybe put him in those positions.
Well, Jay, this is a really tough stretch on the schedule. I mean, 4 of your next 5 games are against ranked opponents, but Michigan and Penn State haven't looked dominant, obviously. Oregon had struggles in its first few weeks before bouncing back against Oregon State last week. And Purdue, yikes, right? Like, what are your expectations over the next 2 weeks? I mean, if you get 2 of the next 5, I think you're feeling pretty good, but you probably want to get a little bit more greedy than that.
Well, I mean, if you're like us, we like to talk about 8-0, and think about the pipe dream, and we certainly wish that would be the case. But these are going to be competitive football games. I think they'll be in every game. I think really the key is the game right before you. So you play good at Nebraska and beat Nebraska, like you said. Even if you lost to Penn State, you're still going to be ranked during that bye week and play a Purdue team that, quite frankly, looks like they're reeling. Purdue and Northwestern are 2 teams we play every year currently. Certainly don't look like world beaters. Got to watch Northwestern against the same Eastern Illinois team struggle in the first half against them. Now, it does seem like Northwestern gets better by the end of the year, or they're always their best when they play us. But you think about that as the long term of the season. Well, those 2 games, we're never going to chalk those up, especially Purdue and Northwestern as wins. But you look at the season, you're like, okay, if we win 2 out of 5 of the next 5, you feel pretty good about it. But you also think, last time we went to Penn State with a much less talented team and a top 10 Penn State team, and we won. So there's guys in that locker room that believe they can win there. This is a team that's beaten Nebraska, I believe, 2 of the last 3 years, correct? These are not like, oh my gosh, we've never done anything. I think that plays a big part in it, right?
Michigan 2 years ago, and Michigan's got a quarterback problem. Right? Oh. Illinois does not. So, yeah, I mean, all of a sudden, they're still ranked opponents. They're still huge tests. But it's just like, hey, Illinois has a chance in those games.
They have a chance. I think they believe. I think they're playing with confidence right now. And when you have a quarterback, you have a chance. I'll go out there and say, I think that Luke Altmaier is a top 5 quarterback in the Big Ten. I mean, who do you have? You have Dylan Gabriel. You have Drew Aller. The guy at Ohio State, he's got weapons all over the place. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to judge that. Tyler Van Dyke looks like he's out with an injury. Cade McNamara's looked average. Dylan Raiola is, Donovan.
No, Dylan.
Dylan.
His
Between
dad's
Donovan and Dylan. Dylan, I mean, he's young. Okay. Lausch at Northwestern. Curtis Rourke, he's put up some good numbers at Indiana. Hudson Card, it's looking like Altmaier was a better pickup than Card at this point with the protection they're giving him. Like, we have a top 5 Big Ten quarterback. I really believe that. Does he blow you out of the water with just his sheer numbers? No. But does he do everything really good? Yes. And so when you have a quarterback, you have a chance. But we got to keep him healthy and upright to throw the ball, because we've had situations where quarterbacks get hurt and, man, it can go sideways in a hurry.
Man, big game Friday night. It's going to be fun to talk about and fun to see what this team is made of. J Leman, you are the goods. We'll talk to you next week about a top 25 matchup, man.
Let's go.